Welcome to the Safe by Design podcast. I am your host, Scott Ployer. This podcast is being brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network and our sponsors. I've spent nearly 40 years working for some of the best local, regional, and national property management companies in the business. I owe much of my success today to the time I spent at these firms. Employers across the country are obligated to provide their workers with a workplace that is as free from known hazards and is as safe as possible. Unfortunately, due to a myriad of reasons, safety is not always given the priority that it needs. This can be a real challenge, even for the best of firms. This podcast can help you change this. Each week, we will cover a specific topic that focuses on the multifamily employees and/or workplace safety. This podcast will provide our listeners with some very important information that they can use to improve their company's safety programs. So please join me and my guests as we delve deeper into this vitally important subject area. We want to ensure that you, your teams, and your properties are safe by design and not just lucky by chance. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Safe by Design. If you listened to my last podcast, then you know that we spent a good deal of time going over how OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, became an agency within the United States Department of Labor over 55 years ago. We also covered the importance of following the standards and requirements of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. Now, the Occupational Safety and Health Act has been amended a few times since its passage, but only with minor changes compared to the original legislation when it became codified. Today, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into several of the topics that we discussed last time as we begin the new year. Today's episode is called Safety Planning, Minimizing Impacts to Operations. A new year offers us all a chance to reset the clock, provide a clean slate, and an opportunity to look back and reflect upon what happened the prior year. We can see more clearly now what worked, what didn't, what could have gone better, and how we can all improve to ensure that we do so in the future. It also gives us an opportunity to be thankful. Yes, thankful. Thankful to work for companies and leaders that are committed to providing employees a safe workplace. Not everyone can say this. We also need to be thankful that we can all go home at the end of the day safely because of this management commitment to the employees. If this isn't on your gratitude list, it probably should be now. As property professionals, we not only have moral and ethical obligations to safeguard our workforce, but legal obligations as well. In our last episode, I shared that regardless of your position in the organization, status, or job title, that each of us is personally responsible for our own safety, but that we, as a group, are also responsible for each other's safety. As Basketball Hall of Fame legend Michael Jordan said, quote, "There is no I in team, but there is in win," end quote. We want to make sure that we win every day when it comes to safety at work. From the legal perspective, the Occupational Safety and Health Act requires companies to provide their workers with as safe a workplace as possible. It is specifically called out in the General Duty Clause, Section 5A1 of the Act, and I quote, "Employers must furnish to their employees a workplace that is free from recognized hazards that are or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm," end quote. Pretty simple, right? Not always. In the safety classes that I teach across the country, I share with my students that the planning stage is the most important first step when embarking on any safety journey. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Today we're going to talk about how this can all be done. But first, we have to define what safety planning is. Safety planning requires us to create proactive strategies, policies, and procedures that mitigate incidents, accidents, and illnesses, and to better manage risks. We have to ensure that we are providing a safe environment in the workplace for our employees, our residents, guests, and other stakeholders. It is also an essential part of the process to maintain operations, employee well-being, as well as regulatory compliance. The key components of an effective safety plan need to include, but are not limited to, the following. Number one, performing risk assessments. First, we must identify risks by performing a hazard assessment and job safety analysis. This is a great tool. It's a checklist that any of us can use. You don't need a lot of education or training to do so. You're just going to go around and look at all of the areas where someone could get hurt and chronicle what's there and what that impact could be. You want to list the workplace hazards found to pinpoint any existing or potential impacts to worker safety and operations. Remember, these can be physical, chemical, ergonomic, or any other risk to the worker. We need to evaluate the likelihood of having that happen and gauge the severity of any potential incident by using the risk matrix. By following these protocols, you will be able to effectively assess, prioritize, and mitigate risks based on potential impacts to your operations. Next, number two, safety policies, procedures, and protocols. For new programs, you need to assess and develop clear written guidelines for addressing any identified risks and hazards. For existing programs, like most of us have, you should review the current policies and procedures. And when doing this, you want to involve staff from all levels of the company. You want to make sure that every department is represented. Next is setting clear objectives for staff. For example, mandatory near-miss reporting of incidents immediately after they happen, and then sharing this information with your teams to prevent possible repeat occurrences. Remember, if it happened to you, it could happen to them too. Share site-specific emergency protocols for events like fires, floods, weather-related or other natural disasters, and/or any variety of crisis situation like public disturbances, protests, vehicle accidents, or medical emergencies. You need to ensure that your policies align with local, county, state, or federal regulations, or other industry standards. We also need to make sure that we stay up to date by reading anything coming out of the standard-making agencies, including OSHA, NIOSH, the Centers for Disease Control, the American National Standard Institute, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, the group that helps us maintain building IAQ and breathability, or other industry compliance partners, of which there are many. Next, training and education. We need to provide good initial onboarding training, and then periodic and annual safety training for employees that is custom tailored to their roles. For example, a maintenance specialist should be trained on what to do when they encounter hazardous chemical situations. This might include how to deal with proper materials handling, chemical labeling, or other issues. We also need to remember the importance of electrical safety, lockout tagout, machine guarding, personal protective equipment, etc. You should plan and conduct mock drills for emergency situations like what to do when the fire alarm sounds, or what to do or not to do during other emergency evacuations, like when a gas leak occurs. There are other situations or events that should be reviewed as well. These include potential active shooter scenarios. None of us we want to see that, but we all realize in today's world it could happen. You could also be subject to severe traffic accidents at or near the property. There could be train derailments or possible hazardous exposure incidents if a property is located along a railway or a major highway. You want to ensure that staff receive ongoing and up-to-date education to address any possible emergency risks that we all need to know regarding things like lithium-ion batteries and their potential safety risks. This is becoming more and more of a problem for property management companies. People are going out and they're buying those little scooters and things like that and bringing them in and storing them inside the apartment or the home. You got to exhibit good care when you're doing this. You really should never have them inside a living unit, but we know that people will do that. So stay up to date on what your city or your county or municipality is requiring when it comes to managing lithium-ion batteries. Number 4, emergency preparedness. You should create or update any specific response plans for different types of emergency. Now, OSHA recommends that we do this at least annually and possibly more frequently as situations may occur and require us to reevaluate. We might want to look at creating rapid response teams at the sites, and they should be identified early and then properly trained to handle any of a variety of emergencies that could occur at our properties. We want to ensure that there is accessible emergency equipment. For example, fire extinguishers, flood pumps, wet vacs, brooms, mops, buckets, squeegees, first aid kits, personal protective equipment, as well as other supplies to be used during any crisis situation. We also want to review and develop a clear set of communication protocols designed to keep employees informed during a crisis. Communication is key to the outcomes and success of any crisis plan. Ensure that resources are properly allocated, including working with local community service agencies that you may need to be mobilized during an emergency. Think about something like this. Negotiate in advance with the local hotel or motel in your area what they refer to as the Red Cross rack rate. You don't want to say that fast. It gets all sloppy. The Red Cross rack rate. This is when residents are displaced when there's something happens in the building, like a fire or a flood or a gas leak or otherwise. You want to talk to these hoteliers and motel managers or other lodging facilities well before an incident occurs. Don't wait until something happens. You want to negotiate that rate up front. The Red Cross gets these special rates from hotels specifically when people are displaced and they need a place to stay temporarily. I've found over the years that by doing this, early in the year, January is a good time to do this, folks. You can get everything in advance. You can make your acquaintances with the local hotel manager or GM and let them know, in the event that I have an emergency at ABC property, can I send my residents here? And what is the current Red Cross rack rate? Now, they're going to know that you understand what that means. It means it's going to be a lot less than the typical posted daily rate for that particular facility. So don't wait until the event happens. Have these conversations sooner rather than later. Number 5, monitoring and reporting. You want to review and update any of your standard operating policies and procedures. I will share with you that from doing risk assessments over the past couple of years in a post-COVID world, a lot of these SOPs have not been updated. You want to make sure that what you have and what you're using and relying upon for your team to be the guidelines for what needs to happen, that they are up to date as much as possible. So, blow the dust off the top of the binder, open it up, and go through it section by section to make sure that the information contained therein is the most up-to-date information. You also want to consider implementing new technologies wherever possible to better manage and track safety metrics. For example, chronicling those near misses I mentioned earlier, or identifying unsafe behaviors. Yes, sometimes people have horseplay at work and they do things that are not safe. You want to make sure that staff understand that there are ramifications for this. We don't want them getting hurt. Yet with them getting hurt isn't just an impact to them and their families, but an impact to our team and our business operations. So you want to make sure that people know that we're going to enforce the HR policies when it comes to unsafe behavior. You want to encourage employees to report any unsafe conditions that they see or feel without fear of retaliation. If you remember our first podcast, then I talked about the Whistleblower Act and the importance of that, protecting people who are only trying to do the right thing by exposing potential safety issues. So make sure that you go over this with your staffs as well. It is guaranteed by the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Act. So we want to make sure that people realize that if they come to you and say, Jim, listen, I was down in the boiler room today and I noticed that one of the outlets on the wall is hanging and there's exposed wiring. We got to get that taken care of right away. That they can feel comfortable saying that to the supervisor without fear of embarrassment or retaliation. So that's what you want to look for when you're going through these risk analyses and coming up with protocols to identify and mitigate them. You want to conduct, review, and analyze reported recurring incidents. Check with your HR team, check with your HR director or your company safety officer. What are the most prevalent incidents, accidents, and injuries that are reported in the workplace? These are workers' comp claims typically. And, companies have to keep an eye on that too. They have to every January put together all of their numbers on what occurred in the workplace for the prior year and then post it from February 1st to April 30th. Now, this can be posted at the actual headquarters building. They can be sent out as postings to go into each of the areas where people work, like a break room or a lunchroom, whatever it is. But OSHA requires employers to post the 300A report, the summary report of the prior year's, recorded incidents so that all employees know what happened during the year. Why? We want to make sure that they're educated and they know that, last year we had 7 slips and trips and falls. We had 5 compression injuries. We had 7 strains and sprains. And if these are the prevalent injuries in your workplace, how do we best plan for them? As professionals, we plan for the best, but we're prepared for the worst. You need to integrate safety into every aspect of property management operations every day. You need to schedule trainings, inspections, drills, or system shutdowns often. Consider if it's possible to do any of these during off-peak hours, so it's not impacting the daily operations. Try that. You can't always do it, but there may be a few opportunities for you to do something after 5 o'clock at night when it's less busy. Remember, a safe workplace ensures fewer disruptions caused by incidents, accidents, or injuries. You want to monitor staff productivity and determine if current safety measures are having any negative effects on team efficiencies, and then adjust them as needed. Sometimes they're just not yielding the results that we hope and expect, and we need to tweak them. That's why you want to go back and look at these policies and procedures at least annually as recommended by OSHA. Next, employee involvement. You want to encourage and promote the safety-first culture of shared responsibility across your workforce. We want everybody to be safe. As I shared on the last podcast, I used to tell my maintenance teams when I was responsible for them, think about what you're about to do for a task on the service order. Do you have all of the appropriate tools you need? Do you have all the supplies you need? Do you have all of the PPE that you need? If the answer to any of those questions is no, then stop and go back and take care of it. I want to make sure that my team, when they were working, were as safe as possible every day for every task. You should be as well. You want to empower your employees to be able to shut down or stop any work being performed by anyone, staff or contractor, if they perceive that work to be done unsafe. Now, this can be a slippery slope for some people. They don't want people just willy-nilly telling contractors, hey, get off the roof. I don't think you're doing that safely. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But with the appropriate training and education and guidance, all of your team members can know what safe roofing practices are. And if they're seeing a contractor not doing that, then yes, they should be allowed to say, hey, you need to stop what you're doing right now. I've just called my supervisor. He's going to come over and we're going to talk about what isn't happening that should be happening. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done. But I am going to share with you that there have been those occasions when I have done this during my career and my staff has done this during their career. We had a situation once where a mason, had erected all of the scaffolding to do the work, the repointing on the brickwork on the side of the building. Well, they were up about 25 feet, and when they were on the scaffolding, they were not using the proper PFAS, the personal fall arrest systems, on the top deck of the scaffolding. My team had been trained to what to look for when contractors are doing this work. So my maintenance supervisor called me on the phone first and said, listen, I'm shutting down the Mason project right now because they're not tied off. And I said, go right ahead. I'm on my way. Now, this is a real life situation. We didn't do it, haphazardly. We didn't do it with any, malice. We just said, hey, listen, do me a favor. Come down from there. We need to talk about some safety precautions. And they did. We did. They went back to work. and they corrected their actions, and they then, with the staff was now properly tied off. God forbid they took too far a step and went off the side of the scaffolding. This is just one example of where the teams that we have can play a vital role in protecting not only their safety and our safety, but the safety of others and the reputation of the property. Make sure that you engage your employees in safety planning processes all during the year. Maybe you're going to set up a safety committee. A lot of companies have them. When you set up the safety committee, you need to make sure that you have representation from all levels of the organization. I went over that in our last podcast. You want to make sure that each department and each area is represented on the committee. We want everybody to share their views. Oftentimes, someone will say, well, what do the folks in accounting or HR or compliance need to worry about when it comes to safety? Well, I'll share with you that during my career, people have gone over to filing cabinets. Yeah, you remember those big metal things that we put files in, before the days of electronic filing? They would go over to those file cabinets. They'd open up a drawer. They'd take out the file. Usually they'd walk right back to their desk with it, sometimes leaving the drawer open. Well, that creates a nuisance hazard for anybody coming around the corner near that file cabinet. They could potentially fall over, get hurt, break an ankle, whatever it is. So just something as simple as that, making sure that all of our teams understand the impending safety issues at our workplaces. And yes, some of that can be in our management offices. Something else you might want to consider. While OSHA doesn't specifically say you should or shouldn't do this, there are ways to have public recognition programs for your employees that are modeling what it takes to be what I refer to as a safety champion. Now, these can be simple things like certificates, employees of the month, or a day off or something like that. Whatever your company decides as a way to reward people for doing the right thing and making the safety first culture the first thing that people think about. The next thing that we're going to talk about are audits and inspections. You need to ensure that we're conducting periodic safety audits and assessments regularly to identify any possible gaps, as well as to ensure the ongoing compliance. We need to inspect equipment, tools, and facilities regularly for any potential hazards. You need to keep copies of all of these inspections, either electronically or otherwise, in some sort of a file. Think about this. In the event somebody gets hurt, one of the first things that a compliance officer is going to say is, can you show me the inspections that took place for the last 6 months or a year before this incident occurred? Hopefully you've got them. So make sure that we're chronicling all of these. We're storing them somewhere. Whatever the record keeping policy is for your company, make sure you're following it. When identified, you need to take the right corrective action to promptly address any issues or risks that appear. I shared on previous episodes that there was a big pothole in a parking lot at one of the properties that I used to supervise. And the team did the right thing. They put a big orange cone in the middle of it to heighten people's awareness that there was a pothole there. Well, the problem is that when I went back 2 months later for my next bi-monthly visit, the cone was still sitting in the hole. Well, you need to take care of the issue as quickly as you can. It wouldn't have taken much for them to take the cone out, put in some, black beauties, some coal top, some cement, some rocks, whatever it might be to mitigate it. You can still draw people's attention to it by spraying orange or yellow paint around the outline of the hole, but at least you've taken some proactive and corrective measures to fill the hole to try to mitigate any instances. So think about that when you're walking around on your weekly site inspections. Are you seeing the same thing week after week? You shouldn't be. Something else that I share with people is that, especially this time of year when it gets darker earlier, we want to pick one night during the week when you can do a lighting inspection on our property. Now, keeping in mind that most of our offices and maintenance teams go home at 5 o'clock, or 6 o'clock. Well, you might need to schedule a night during the week. I have always recommended Wednesday nights because Mondays and Fridays are no good. Tuesdays and Thursdays we're still picking up from Monday or Friday. So Wednesday always became my night to have people do lighting inspections on our property. You want to walk around, note the lights, note what if any of them are out, if any of them are going dim, because that means they're going out soon, and making sure you get them on a work order to either have your team and or your electrical contractor come out and take care of it. Lighting inspections are huge, folks. If someone were to bring a lawsuit against the property because of lighting, you want to make sure that you have those inspection reports there as well. So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as Benjamin Franklin said over 280 years ago. It still holds true today. Next, we're going to talk about mental health and wellness. The primary goal of mental health and wellness is to make sure that our employees' physical and mental health needs are being met. We as companies realize that it isn't just the physical work that we're doing, but the mental impacts that some of this work has on us. A recent survey noted that a lot of people feel extremely stressed at work because of the staffing problems that people are facing everywhere in the country today. 3 out of 4 people said they feel stressed because of diminished staff capabilities, people doing more than they used to, people spread too thin. So mental health has become just as important as physical safety and physical health. So be cognizant of that with your teams. Make sure you're checking in with them. Maybe something as simple as, hey, how you doing? Everything okay? Is there anything I can do to help? I know this sounds a little wishy-washy, but trust me when I tell you, you don't know what's going on in that person's personal world. They could be dealing with something pivotal at home. Their elder family member may be sick. Their child may be sick. You don't know. Everybody's living with something. Everybody is dealing with something. So just have check-ins with your teams, maybe over a cup of coffee or at the lunch table, or do something. How are we all doing? Is there anything that we could be doing together or separately that's going to help you? This is integral when it comes to mental health and wellness in the workplace. Safety planning is a vital part of every company's policies and procedures. They are designed to create a compliant, productive, safe, and sustainable workplace. A safe workplace reduces incidents and accidents that cause injuries, and it has been proven to improve morale and job satisfaction. When the workplace is safe, people go to work. When people feel valued, that their companies want them to be safe, people go to work. So remember that. We have an obligation to our employees to make sure that they're coming in every day to a safe workplace. You want to consider incorporating mental health resources into these safety plans. For example, offering stress management or stress reduction programs, access to counseling, flexible options like telehealth visits. Again, 3 out of 4 people today say they feel stressed at work as an industry average. Some of those folks are probably in your office today. Let's put the human back in humanity and just check in with them. We all want to promote a work-life balance to the best of our ability to reduce stress-related issues in the workplace and mitigate and hopefully eradicate any potential safety risks. Next thing we want to talk about is advancing technology. In this day and age, especially of AI, we want to make sure that we're adopting the latest technology to stay abreast of whatever's going on in the landscape. You need to embrace and adopt this to the fullest. You get someone who's a boomer like me, it can be a little more of a challenge than maybe a millennial or a Gen Xer or a Gen Yer. But technology can be used to work smarter and not harder. I know we've all heard that saying before. Technology gives us that opportunity. There are many ways to use it when it comes to safety training, including handheld devices like iPads, tablets, electronic notebooks, and mobile phones. Safety classes, programs, and things like that can be delivered using these devices. It doesn't always have to be in a conference room with other people set up to learn. Yes, that's a great way to do it. But in this day and age of technological advances, we have other ways of learning. So make sure that we're at least looking at those opportunities. It can also be something as simple as deploying virtual reality or other simulation devices to deliver and improve learning while minimizing downtime and maximizing efficiency. I talked to a colleague of mine who uses the virtual reality glasses. for staff people to learn how to fix plumbing and electrical problems. Now, that's a great tool. I haven't seen it in action myself, but I looked at it online on YouTube, and I've seen, the premise of it. If there's an opportunity for your teams to use virtual reality lenses and glasses to do some of that stuff, then maybe that's a way to go. When you actually do the work physically by your hands, you're going to make sure that you understand exactly what each step in that process requires. So again, that wasn't around 10 years ago, but it is today. Technology is emerging every day, and we need to stay up with it. Consider implementing new safety monitoring systems like additional alarms, sensors, or other tracking software that can measure and report real-time hazard detection. Again, this isn't a pie-in-the-sky dream. It isn't, 22nd century technology. It's 21st century technology. It's where we are today. There are other ways for us to make sure that we're doing things smarter and not harder. Next is legal compliance. Pursuant to the federal law, employers are required to comply with multiple safety regulations and standards every day. This can vary by industry and sector. We fall under the administrative sector in property management. We're right up there with real estate agents, accountants, realtors, etc. So what the standards and regulations are for us are certainly going to be different than those for the construction industry or the agricultural industry, or anything on the other sides, where heavy equipment is used, earth moving equipment on sites. So keep in mind that we have to make sure that we fully understand what we are required to be doing within our business sector. Effective safety planning can help companies avoid legal actions like lawsuits, fines, or other penalties that are a result of workplace incidents. Record keeping is important. Your HR departments have a key role in all of this. So it's important that if something occurs, that you let somebody know so the HR team can chronicle it. Because even though something happens today, and it may not seem that big today, a week from now or a month from now, it could turn into something else. And we don't want to be doing that first report at that time. So don't be ashamed to admit that something happened and we need to talk about it. Make sure that, everybody goes to work, is working safely every day. Make sure that the company's protocols and procedures are being followed every day. Make sure that we protect our employees, our residents, and everybody else. Our reputation is key in all of this. It's very important when we talk about, agency involvement, syndicators, financial institutions, or other stakeholders that may be investing in our properties. Trust me when I tell you, a strong management commitment to a safety-first culture makes a big impact on all those people who are considering investing their money in our properties. Keep in mind that a safety-first culture not only attracts, but helps to retain talented workers. We all know what's happening out there today, folks, with the struggles that we're all facing to find good, qualified staff people. A safety program can make people more astute and aware of what's going on at their workplace and realize, what? If someone's offering me another 50 cents or $1, it may not be for the right reason I'm leaving. I'm going to stay here because I know people care about me here. People take my safety seriously here. And hopefully down the road, you might be able to get that additional bump in pay or additional time off, whatever you might be looking for. We don't need to jump around from job to job necessarily to do that. So while we're all dealing with the staffing challenges today, a good safety program helps us keep the people who we're currently working with. It also minimizes downtime. And it also can typically minimize, if not completely eradicate, the high costs of hiring an outside search firm to find the replacements for the staff that are leaving. These can be tens of thousands of dollars spent to find a replacement for Joe the maintenance person or Sally the compliance person. We want to keep the current workers that we have. They're our greatest asset. By utilizing an effective safety planning program into everyday operations and continuously improving upon it, organizations can create a safer, more resilient, and productive workplace. That's it for today, folks. We're going to pick this up again next time, but until then, have a great week and stay safe. That's a wrap. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast today. I hope that I have shared some information with you that you can take back and put into practice. If you have any comments or would like to make recommendations for a future episode, please visit www.multifamilymedianetwork.com and let us know. You can also sign up for our newsletter so you know about our other upcoming broadcasts. We also want to thank our sponsors, without whom we could not make these broadcasts available. Please like, follow, and subscribe to this and our other great MMN podcasts on your favorite channel. See you next time. And until then, stay safe.